Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. I'd like to welcome my guest today, James Gilmour. James is co-founder, director and head of launch operations at Gilmour Space Technology and has over 15 years experience in marketing, business development and operations here in Australia and also in Singapore. James led and was instrumental in driving Gilmour's engagement with government, academia and industry. And today he's responsible for launch site development and operations for Gilmour launch vehicles. He also holds other positions dedicated to furthering Australia's contributions in space. He's on the Advisory Council for Space Industry Association of Australia and a director at the National Space Society of Australia. Welcome, James. That sounds pretty exciting. I think you live in a very exciting world.
Good day, Estella, and good day to your listeners. Yes, very humbled and happy to be chatting with you and talking about what we do today.
Great. So my first question is how do two boys from the bush, Brisbane actually, end up in the space industry?
Well, look, I always ask people, how can you not be inspired about significant space events that have happened, over the last kind of 50 years? And actually, we got inspired through some activities that happened mainly over in America, where we saw significant activities happening by private individuals into the space game and no longer dominated by, large multinational corporations or significant space, national space parties. So hard not to get inspired by that. And then we took a real big chance of being, I think, very brave and bold to make a step into the unknown. Mm-hmm. And it is with a great pride and satisfaction within a short space of 10 years, an infant company with a personnel of less than a dozen people to have grown to the largest space technology employer in Australia. Wow. Devoted solely to manufacturing of rockets and satellites, and at the present time employing over 190 full-time employees.
Wow. So I want to go back. You always grow up knowing you would be in this industry. And I'm thinking about the kids out there that are going to be listening to this. Was it something you knew from when you were young, this is what I was going to do?
Well, look, I don't think I ever said to, my father, I want to be an astronaut. But, a bit of a marketing gimmick is my grandma, God love her, rest her kind soul, did say that, James, you're going to be a star. But what I think he meant was for me to get to the stars and for my brother and I to do what we can to achieve that feat, because our mission in the near term is to launch small satellites specifically to low Earth orbits or LEO as soon as heavenly possible. And then in the longer term, our ambitions have always been to send humans to space.
Right, we'll get to that. Let's go back a step and let's just talk about how Gilmour Space came about. So you and Adam, your brother, founded Gilmour Space Technologies in 2012, and you opened your first office in Singapore, where Adam was working as a banker. So that's that's a massive step for mankind for him. And a little later, the company expanded its facilities by opening right here in your home state, Queensland, and the Gold Coast specifically. So what brought you to the Gold Coast? What brought you both to the Gold Coast? And where did you go from starting it in Singapore to bringing it over here?
Yeah, well, Singapore, I think, played an important part in our where we are today. We went over there with the intention to build some high-fidelity equipment and mock-ups for what was called the Spaceflight Academy. And that was extremely challenging, I think, partly because, space at that time was unknown. less unknown compared to Australia in Singapore at that time. And what brought us down to the Gold Coast is A, the fact that we were born in Brisbane. B, we did know it quite well. C, we were looking to utilise some of the great aspects of Southeast Queensland in region. It's existing aerospace industry, the maintenance, repair, and overhaul of airlines, the marine industry, the tourism aspect, the regional quite significant activity in mining and mets, so to speak. So we really thought that it had a number of key factors. And I have been told building rockets and satellites and living in Gold Coast is living the dream. So that does add some unique messaging when trying to procure some talent to sunny Gold Coast.
Oh, it definitely does. And whenever I speak about the Gold Coast, I say, look, we've got great beaches, we've got, Gold Coast Health and Knowledge Precinct, and we actually have space. We actually have Gilmour Space technology right here on the Gold Coast. And people are quite amazed that this industry is here and growing rapidly. But let's talk a little bit more. Can you give me an overview of exactly what Gilmour Space Technologies do? So can I take a helicopter view? What do you guys do?
Sure. Well, briefly, and then getting into details. So there are literally about 22,000 small satellite missions that need to be launched in the next decade.
Wow.
And there's just not enough supply to meet that demand. So what we do at Gilmour is we solve that problem. And we're developing a launch vehicle called Eris that will deliver mass to orbit that we hope will be faster, cheaper than all known competition. And we're going to be demonstrating that significant capability getting closer to the end of the year in Bowen, which is just north of Mackay, south of Queensland.
And I think you've chosen Bowen as your launch site, isn't it? So the development gets done here on the Gold Coast, correct? But the launch.
So we build the vehicle, which is called Eris, which is roughly 23 meters in length and fully fueled, weigh about 33 tons. And that's a 3-stage launch vehicle. And then the concept of operations for transport and logistics is that we will ship it via road up to Bowen Orbital Spaceport, which sits in the state development area of Abbott Point. And then inside the vehicle assembly building, we will reintegrate the vehicle and perform those operational procedures. And then via a transporter erector to the launch pad, and then subject to us satisfying all of our number of approvals, begin filling operation and then begin the countdown. And then hopefully the good people of Bowen will be able to see mass leave leave Earth, which will be significant.
Wow. And I do want to get back to satellites because I need to understand 22,000 is a lot of satellites, but I want to move forward on Eris because you've mentioned it. So you've just finished testing Eris rocket and particularly your Sirius engine. How did that perform? Because I know a lot was, that was the first testing of your Sirius engine. How did that perform and what's the next move on that?
Well, it was nominal. We've done a number of main engine tests, but that main engine test that you're referring to, that was late last year, and that was essentially satisfied our mission duty profile for us to go into, let's call it the countdown, or enough confidence that main engine will be nominal regarding performance for the proposed mission. So that went really well. We've still got a lot of wood to chop in terms of integrating the rest of the vehicle, but we are significantly progressing and getting much closer to a launch window within the next 4 to 6 months.
Wow. So does it all have a point of difference? So your Cirrus engines, do they have a point of difference to other entities out there trying to do similar?
Great question. Love that you've done your research. So our main choice of technology is a hybrid rocket propulsion. Traditional choices of technology are either your liquid rocket engines or your solid rocket motors. Hybrids are a little bit different, that they use a liquid oxidizer that gets pushed through a catalyst into a solid fuel chamber, and then that reacts and creates that combustion or that ignition that satisfies that second Newton's law of motion. So hybrids haven't really been developed for space applications in the past. We chose hybrids because we believe that they are cheaper to manufacture. In fact, our orbital launch demonstration will come under about $100 million US, where that has not been achieved by any of our international peers like SpaceX and Rocket Lab and Virgin. So design for minimal viable cost is one of our factors, and that plays in well with the choice of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Hybrids are also a greener propellant, which we think that will play significant. That has advantages when you're talking about environmental considerations, which is important. They also have lower life cycle costs and are traditionally safer in their operation. So a number of significant factors went into the decision of the choice of technology.
Wow. And that's substantial. 100 million. Did you say 100 million under?
100. We will demonstrate an orbital launch capability for under $100 million US.
That's amazing.
We'll come in way under that.
Wow. So can I talk about satellites a little bit, because 22,000. What are they doing? What are these satellites doing? 22,000. That's a lot to go.
Yes. So, the majority of those proposed satellites missions are really used for observing Earth or for communications and internet. There is the goal of companies such as Starlink by SpaceX or OneWeb, launching thousands of satellites alone. Starlink's looking to bring internet to under rural or remote locations, I think, which is really, really good. Particularly for people in those rural or remote locations with hard to get access, because we are in more of an enabled or internet kind of based society. And each of them, Starlink and OneWeb, they are planning to launch more than 40,000 satellites in the coming years, and they're called mega constellations to low Earth orbit. So quite significant, and essentially we're looking to be the TNT or the FedEx of space delivery. So people will need a ride or a hitch to low Earth orbit. So we'll look to provide that on-demand, low-cost support to those people who need access to space.
So essentially, telecommunications and internet and such, it's really all going to be from satellite, isn't it? In the future.
That's the way it's going.
Sorry, and they're purpose owned, so nobody shares that technology. Like, they won't share. It's just like one company owns whatever amount of satellites. Is that correct?
Yes. So there could be some dual sharing, capabilities or technology on it, but normally it's just, for that dedicated service. To answer your other question about our satellite business, so we have come up with a new form factor that we announced to the market in December 2021. and that was essentially on the back end of around 2018 that we had either gone to or picked up a paper from the I think it was the 32nd annual Small Satellite Conference in Utah, which essentially they were talking about a new launch unit form factor on the back of that paper. So we've invested and spun up a small business unit dedicated to providing a new form factor called the GSAT, which is essentially 60 by 60 by 60 in the form factor. It'll have a payload available volume of about 125 U's, right up to over 400 U's. So someone that has a sensor or a payload, they can integrate that onto our platform. And so it'll have about 60 kilograms to 100 kilograms of that payload mass, and roughly from 50 watts to about 1,500 watts of power.
Wow.
We see that as potentially being a game changer.
Gosh. My next question was, where is Gilmour just going to stay, or not just going to, but is the future for Gilmour still in the satellites and in the Cirrus engines and getting these rockets? And is that where you're going to stay, or do you have these grander visions? Are we actually going to be moving people? Is that an option?
So, like I mentioned, our vision statement is all orbits, all planets for the benefit of humanity. All orbits, because our rockets will have the capacity to deliver satellites and spacecraft to all commercial orbits in LEO within the next 2 years, and then to Moon and Mars orbits from 2025, 2026. And all planets, because ultimately, and hopefully like a lot of your listeners today, we believe that it's inevitable that humanity will become a multi-planetary species. We are explorers. That's the basis of our destiny. And for that, we will need transportation. So
exciting.
Bigger and better things. And look, we're looking to design bigger vehicles to take more mass to orbit, and there should be no reason, particularly if we can start considering expanding our footprint in Bowen, that we can't launch a commercial crew program from Bowen. There's no reason why we can't turn Gold Coast and Bowen into the next Space Coast of Australia. I see that as being quite significant. And I would like Gold Coast to be known more for its technology rather than its meter maids or tourism. Not to say that meter maids and tourism is a bad thing, but I think we can aspire to be a bit more bolder and braver.
I agree. Well, that then brings me to some of the opportunities and some of your challenges. And I'm going to ask you that question, but first I was going to ask you around staffing. And so, do you have the staff you require? And I think a lot of kids grow up dreaming of going into space. And if I'm in high school and I would like a career in space, what do I need to do to get to that job? Like, what should I be taking? What should I be doing? But I guess first question first. Do you require more staff, and what does that look like for you? And how many do you have now?
Yes, well, so we've got about 190 full-time employees.
Wow.
So I think over 60 are welders, fabricators, machinists, technicians across the mechanical, electrical, and composite manufacturing kind of trades. We do view education, training, and retraining of inspiring technical trades people as critical to the success of a viable space manufacturing industry in Queensland. To talk more about skills needed to support jobs in the Australian Space Agency, it varies from technical skills. So for jobs in engineering, design, programming, aeronautics, fabrication, cyber security, autonomous systems, moving operational skills, machining, data analytics, navigation, satellite control, remote operations, electrical, mechanical, and space safety. And then the other consideration, you just don't have to be an astronaut, or an engineer to work in the Australian Space Agency. Support skills, visualization, communication, management, regulation, law, space medicine, habitat design, sales, marketing, policy, research. The Australian Space Agency said that, their goal is, 30,000 space industry jobs, I think by 2030. I think there are some significant risks, to that. Some engineers, not just in my industry, but in the clean energy industry, have been waiting 3 years, waiting to get into our country to support industries like clean energy. Others have actually given up on the Australian dream. Engineers Australia said that they need 50,000 engineers in the coming years to support Australia technology development. That obviously has a huge opportunity, a huge risk for major project costs. So I know that the government is doing aspects to support staff shortages and skilled migrations. But I think just referring back, that there are a number of skills needed to support jobs in the Australian space industry, and it's not just engineering.
It's everything, isn't it? It's exciting. Okay, so what about supply chain? Like, you guys are growing so rapidly. How can we take advantage of the supply chain? How are you going with that? I know since COVID, there's been a lot of difficulty in a lot of industries with, with supply and demand. How are you guys handling that, and what do you see the future in that being for you?
Yeah, look, I think supply chain is a key discriminator. There are a number of, issues with, manufacturing, the high cost and risk of working in Australia or working with Australian companies that have little or no heritage in space manufacturing. Gilmour Space actively supports the growth of local supply chain. We have, I'd probably say, over 300 local suppliers, mostly from adjacent industries like mining, general manufacturing, and engineering. That number will only grow as we transition from the innovation phase into the new product development and manufacturing phase. And what's even more exciting about that is that when we go to space, we're literally taking all those suppliers that are into our supply chain with us, for them to go out and compete, not just domestically, on abroad, and essentially saying, we supply Gilmour Space with this. Not saying, they won't be able to talk too much if they're under an NDA or contractual arrangements, but there's a huge opportunity for them to then go grow their business development needs. We would like to see a bit more of a push, from the government and, other stakeholders to build more onshore capabilities. We saw from COVID how reliant that Australians are into or reliant upon overseas kind of supply chain or whatnot. There tends to be that notion that we're good from digging things out of the ground and then sending them overseas. I think we can be a bit more bolder and braver, but I do see a real sovereign risk for not being bold and brave enough.
No, I totally agree with you, actually. So I guess that actually almost goes to the answer. What do you see the challenges and the opportunities for the Gold Coast? Did you want to speak a little bit more to that at all? Do you see any others?
Well, look, I mean, I have spoken about this a couple of times. What made Silicon Valley successful?
Hmm.
I think one of the reasons for Silicon Valley, was the spirit of cooperation.
Yep.
If you look at Gold Coast, surrounding areas have really good access to universities, government research centres, commercial labs,
Yes.
cohort innovation space. I think we just lack a bit of access to venture capital.
Mm-hmm.
So the government could do, maybe a bit more to see some of those businesses co-locate or set up office in Queensland, particularly if people are wanting to work more from home. No better place to do that than to go down for a surf down at Snapper. And I think one other thing we kind of do lack is highly entrepreneurial risk-taking culture. But like I did mention to the cohort innovation space and a few of those others, there is a bit more awareness around that risk-taking culture.
Yeah.
So, I really think that Gold Coast potentially has something special to compete, not just only with Australia but the rest of the world. So, I'm really bullish.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I guess that leads me to probably the last question. What is it about the Gold Coast that you love and keeps you patient and actually keeps Gilmour here? I'm sure there's other places that want Gilmour Space Technologies positioned in them. So what keeps you guys here? Why?
Well, look, I think Gold Coast or Brisbane has a really unique mix of aspects or elements that really make it enjoyable to live and work in this region. Particularly if you like the beach. I think some of the best beaches that I've ever visited. In my life. You've got the not too far, probably about 40 minutes from Gold Coast, Springbrook National Park with the waterfalls, and I think they call it the world's greatest lookout or whatnot. You literally walk through this bush or this forest that dates back to the Cretaceous period, and then you look out over to Mount Warning and I think Byron Bay in the south, and to Coolangatta. If you've got a motorbike, which I do, I really enjoy heading up the mountains. Obviously, sticking to the speed limit and not being too risky, of course. But it's relatively easy to get around. I think the M1 is Australia's busiest road corridor. Great to hear that they are looking to upgrade. That to carry more traffic to it. Our traffic jams don't really compare to the heartache and pain and anguish that I had to suffer while living and working in Sydney. But I think as we start to grow, so will the skills base, or the talent, or the supply chain. The universities and vocational education training will look more at the kind of space domain. I think there'll be more universities research collaborations. Very keen on developing regional Australia in Bowen with our links in Gold Coast. And then I think the biggest part, is inspiring the next generation.
I was going to end up on that. I was going to ask you. So, what's your advice to some school kid that's sitting listening to this? What advice can you give them? They're going to look at what their career is. This has raised their interest. What should they do? What advice do you give them?
Well, look, my first advice to any kind of entrepreneur is always being resilient. Whether you're going out to seek venture capital or investment, that is extremely challenging. I think Adam and I have had more no's than you could literally sink a battleship with. But we're determined to really demonstrate a sovereign space capability that hasn't been achieved before. again, maybe for listeners that might be thinking, hey, I want to be in the space industry, but, I didn't want to be an engineer. There are those technical jobs around, design, programming, fabrication, cyber, other support skills of communication, management, regulation, law. I think laws are going to be a huge, avenue. And shout out to Bond University, who I think can be a key contributor in that. Data science, real-time signal imaging and video processing. I think it's, Jules Verne, and I'm going to paraphrase it, said that anything that one person can imagine, another person can make real. And I really think that, particularly in Australia, we're on the cusp of something significant that will be remembered for quite some time. And I'm happy to be part of that and do whatever I can to, show and prove that, the Australian Space Agency is real talent and tangible, and it's happening right here in Gold Coast.
Certainly is. And on that note, I better let you get back to whatever rocket thing you're trying to do at the moment. But thank you so much for talking to me today, James. It's been a pleasure and very, very interesting.
No, thank you. Look, and I also did want to have a shout out to RDA. You guys, particularly in region, have been instrumental in terms of helping Gilmour Space get to where we were. I think that kicked off in 2018. And then around 2019, we kicked things off with the council, RDA, North Queensland Bulk Ports. Then together with RDA and Gilmour, we set up the Launch Wind Sundays Committee with DSD, GW3, TOQ and CQ University. And, you guys have provided a lot of support for the Bowen launch facility. So, again, shout out to RDA. You guys have really helped us. So thank you.
No, thank you. That's great. I'm glad we can be of some help anyway. So thank you very much. And I look forward to catching up with you, Adam and Michelle.
All right. Take care, Estella.
Yes,
all the best.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.